evening, everyone, and welcome to Healthy Boundaries for Family Recovery. My name is Chad Thomas. I'm the Community Health Education Coordinator for Chester County Hospital Community Health and Wellness Services. It's my great pleasure to introduce you to two speakers this evening, to Kim Porter, the Executive Director of Be a Part of the Conversation, and to Judy Hirsch, who is, I just forgot your title, Judy. What is it again?
I'm the Director of Community Engagement.
Director of Community Engagement for Be a Part of the Conversation. Thank you. I wrote it on a post-it and don't know where I put it. It's right there. Okay. Thank you so much. I also wanted to mention to everyone that this is what we call a virtual wellness presentation. We offer a lot of these through Chester County Hospital, and I will put in the chat box an upcoming presentation that we have coming up this month called Healthy Boundaries for a Family Recovery. That will be on Tuesday, May 10th from 6 to 7 p.m. I will put in the chat box the link that you can click on or copy and paste into your browser for more information about that training. Again, Kim and Judy, thank you so much for making this event available to this evening and sharing your time and wisdom with us. And with that, I will hand things off to Kim. Thank you, Kim.
So Chad, I think you just mentioned tonight's program. You have another program coming up though, right? You just talked about healthy boundaries for family recovery.
That's online. I'm really good at this stuff being recorded. I apologize. We have an upcoming training on Wednesday, May 18th called Connections, Trauma, and Suicide. It's from 6 to 7 p.m. that evening, and I will put the link in the chat box. I apologize. Sorry about that. Thanks, Kim. I'll hand things off to you.
Oh, good. Thank you so much, Chad. Really appreciate it. All right, I am going to start sharing my screen. Judy, can you see that okay? All right, thank you. Thank you for joining us, everyone. I'm really happy to be with you. Thank you to Chad Thomas and our community partners at Penn Medicine, Chester County Hospital. This program is funded by the Chester County Department of Drug and Alcohol Services. As Chad said, I'm the Executive Director of Be a Part of the Conversation. We have a really nice relationship with Chester County. This is the second time we've also partnered with Penn Medicine at Chester County Hospital, so love being with you all. Please feel free to submit any questions that you have during this program. You can use the chat or you can use the Q&A option. Your questions will not, we are recording this, but your questions will not be visible to other panelists and they will not be recorded either. So those will be just between us, and Judy especially will be keeping track of those, and we'll make sure at least by the end of the program, we're only with you for an hour this evening. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to get to all of your questions. At the end of this, you will see a survey option pop up. Please take a moment to complete that. We really, really, really love to hear from you. Even if you've taken our surveys before, we need to know about how was this program? Was it helpful? What are some things you'd like to hear about in the future? It really helps us out quite a bit. And we like to share those with our partners as well. I want to let you know about just two programs that we have coming up. There are a whole lot coming up, but there are just two that I'll mention right now. The first one is this Thursday, May 12th, starting at 7 p.m. That's from 7 to 8:30, also on Zoom. We're going to be talking about important things we need to understand about addiction. Substance use disorders are one thing, but we also will be talking about process or behavioral addictions, such as gambling and technology, sex and love, pornography, shopping, eating, so many things. And addiction can be challenging on a lot of levels. We're going to have someone in recovery sharing his story about gambling addiction, plus some really terrific therapists. So Judy's going to share the calendar link so that you can learn to registering for this on our calendar, but there's a link for that as well. I also want to let you know about a really fun day that we have where we're going to just come together and have a good time in a park in Plymouth Meeting. It's easy to get to, I believe. I think it should be easy for everyone, but we just need to find time to celebrate and be together. So this is for anyone impacted by substance use or addiction. We'll have food and fun and some yoga and meditation. We'll have a picnic. So anyway, I hope you'll join us for that as well. Lots more programs coming up that you can find on our calendar. Especially for our topic this evening, I think it's very important that we family members find support for ourselves. So if you are a spouse or another significant other in a relationship that is impacted by addiction, please look into Al-Anon or Nar-Anon meetings. Those are 12-step programs for loved ones. But we parents, I am the parent of someone in recovery, and Judy is as well, and we really need each other. So we have these parent partnership meetings that happen every week. This is a calendar that has all the meetings listed. Most of them are still on Zoom. Those are the green buttons, and some are in purple. Those are in person, and there's one hybrid meeting. So please check that out. Lots of good resources on that page in addition to those meetings. So let's dive into our topic. We are talking about boundaries for families who are impacted by addiction, some kind of addiction. Probably in this case, we're talking about substance use disorders. And we have to first understand that addiction in and of itself is kind of a thief. It takes away a lot of things from us. It steals our loved ones' integrity, makes them make promises that they don't keep to themselves. They might have lost their ability to control their substance use. Their thinking and their behaviors have changed. This breach of trust with themselves, with others, creates deep interpersonal and a lot of conflict with the outside world as well. So in short, they're lying to themselves, possibly others, so that they can keep going in their substance use, and facing the truth is really painful for them. I'm sorry. All of this can be true for us as family members as well. When we love somebody who has a substance use disorder, we're always faced with this feeling like we're giving up our integrity, kind of, where we wouldn't do certain things that now we're doing. Maybe we're covering up for someone or making some excuses. All comes from a place of love, but we can really kind of change our perspective on a lot of things, and a lot of our values kind of change. We lose our power and our sanity a lot of times when this happens, and we can get that back. We can make changes. And I can definitely speak from the perspective, not only as the mother of someone in recovery, but my dad is an alcoholic as well. And I know that this really impacted our entire family. But especially as a parent, I must say that I lowered the bar a lot. And what that means is we're starting to tolerate behavior that is really beneath our child's dignity, and maybe we've abandoned, again, our values. So just as our loved one might have a new normal, in my son's case, he was maybe stealing from me, or or just not the same person, not the same friend group and all of that. But we get a new normal as well as family members. So for me, it was a lot of denial, a lot of making excuses. Just sort of writing it off as he was 21 when he went into recovery. So it was, I blamed a lot of it on his maturity level, being still very young and that sort of thing. But I also accepted stuff that I really wish I hadn't, because we really don't like to see, we want to pick our battles, right? We use that language a lot. Like, I got to pick my battles. He's hurting, something's going on. And why do I want to poke the bear when they're already hurting? I don't like to see them in this much pain. So I'm not going to confront them about the things that I see happening. So now we've kind of compromised some of those things. And, there's this word enabling that is kind of a loaded word. It can feel very shaming as somebody who might have done some enabling. But I love what, there's an author named Diana Clark who writes a lot about this, about family recovery. And she likes to call enabling, really what it is protecting addiction. So our intention is to protect our loved one. That comes from a good place, but we often end up instead protecting the disease. So when my child, in my case, asks for $20 or $50, I need it right now, whenever, who really needs the $50? Is it my child, and will that help him in his recovery if he hasn't chosen it yet? Or am I feeding the addiction? Am I protecting the addiction by letting it continue to grow? This is totally instinctive. This is completely natural for us to want to protect our loved one. It doesn't cause the addiction. We know, if you know the 3 C's, we didn't cause it, we can't control it, and we can't cure it. But because we want to protect our loved one, our choices may protect their addiction instead by protecting them from the consequences of their behaviors. We can make some changes. So kind of looking at what boundaries mean for us as family members. They're personal limits we set for ourselves in order to protect our health and well-being and to care for our own needs. This is not selfish. This is really important for us to have a healthy relationship with anyone, is to protect our own needs. Boundaries guide us, the way we interact with others, and it helps us to set limits on how we'll tolerate behavior from others, so how they're speaking to us. And they're essential for our self-care, for us to go forward and have any kind of relationship with that loved one. And none of this, again, is easy. This is very hard work. This is all very counterintuitive, especially when it comes to parenting. If you've ever attended Al-Anon meetings, Nar-Anon meetings, these sorts of things, you might have heard this term detached with love. This is a kind of a personal thing of mine. I don't like that expression. How do I detach from my dad? How do I detach from my child or a spouse or a partner? I can't really comprehend how that works. So I like to say disengage from the chaos. Because what comes with addiction a lot of times is chaos. A lot of times it's stuff that has us angry or fearful or feeling emotionally unsafe. And that's a lot of chaos. So if I can recognize this behavior is the disease. I'm watching the disease. I'm watching the chaos happen right now. I'm not going to sign up for that. I'm not going to engage in that. So that's where the boundaries come in. And so much of it is awareness, just getting used to recognizing, okay, I'm seeing the chaos happen again. I'm seeing the disease happen with my child. And I also think there's a little bit confusion around what is a boundary and what is a rule, because I'll hear people say like, well, we told our loved one what the boundaries are, and they keep violating those boundaries. Well, the boundaries aren't for our loved one. The boundaries are for us. A rule is important if you're living with someone with a substance use disorder. So if we have a rule, like you will not use substances under our roof, or you will not drink and drive, or you will not, whatever that may be, and they break that rule, the boundary is how we respond to that. Will I follow through with what I said my boundary is? So for just some examples to help with this. So if the rule is you cannot yell at me, the boundary is I'm going to end the conversation with you when you're disrespectful or aggressive with me. If the rule is you can't keep asking us for money, the boundary is we'll help with expenses that are essential to your recovery and outside of your budget. So this really brings up an important piece of this, which is what are we doing to be helpful and what are we doing to enable or protect the addiction? So if someone needs help financially, if they just don't have the capacity to do it, and especially if it's asking for money that will get them into treatment or for therapy or for something that is clearly connected to their recovery, like recovery housing, something like that, then absolutely it is appropriate for us to, and within our means, be able to help them with that. But again, within our means, because we don't want to necessarily go bankrupt helping someone who may not be putting in the effort that they need to make that worthwhile. So if, however, we are paying for something we're not comfortable with, like a pack of cigarettes or going out to the movies, and nothing wrong with going to the movies, but do we know that's what the $20 is for? So kind of thinking about that, am I doing something they're not able to do for themselves that will support their recovery? Or is this something that they should be able to manage on their own, particularly if they're an adult? Another example, the doors are locked at 11 p.m. during the week. The boundary might be, I work and I need the house to be quiet by 11 p.m. And you notice with these boundaries, it's the word I is in there a lot. So we'll talk about I statements in a little bit. And one last example, you cannot use drugs or alcohol. So that is clearly not a boundary because that is not about me. That is about another person. The boundary is I will not support your use of drugs or alcohol. So hopefully that helps to clarify that. So a lot of times there are more than one family member who are trying to intervene or help or support someone who has an addiction. We may not always feel the same way when we're behind the scenes talking together about our loved one, but it is really important, at least when we're in their presence, to have a united front, to show a united front. So getting on the same page with another parent, with a spouse about a young one, whatever that is, what will we agree to? What can we agree to that we will be consistent with our loved one in holding that boundary? And they really need us to be consistent and strong and follow through on this. They will find the weakest link and they will go to that person. And a lot of times I see this where we'll hear from parents, especially, who will say, I'm always the one that gets the phone call with the hard ask, like, I need this, I need that. They don't go to the other parent. Well, most times the other parent is the one who has the stronger boundary. They're looking for the person that they feel that they can probably, get something from. So what we'll often recommend is screening phone calls if they don't live with you, to like check your messages first and not take the phone call the minute the phone rings. So we can listen together, perhaps, as family members, to say, like, how are we going to respond to this? What is our agreed upon answer to this? So there are a lot of ways to kind of work together. And this is not ganging up on someone. This is just giving them the support they need in a really consistent and strong way, bringing a strong presence to that. There's also a lot of inclination to want to sort of manage the family dynamic. So here we have a picture of some sisters, probably maybe one of them has a substance use disorder. The other one might be carrying some anger and resentment about it because there's been chaos, right? And especially for parents, I think we often try to orchestrate the dynamics of that, like making excuses, defending the person who's addicted, or trying to force some reconciliation or force therapy even. Obviously, we can offer or suggest, it sounds like you're very frustrated with your sister, brother, uncle, whatever that is. Would you like to see someone professionally about this? Or you might even suggest as an Al-Anon or Nar-Anon support group meeting. I often recommend also for especially siblings who have some of that resentment that they're carrying about their sibling with an addiction, that they might consider attending an open AA or NA meeting, Narcotics Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous. So those 12-step meetings can either be closed, meaning they're just for people who want to stop drinking or using drugs, but some of the meetings are listed as open and anyone can go. You don't necessarily share anything. You don't speak at those meetings, but you can attend and listen. It really helps, I think, for siblings and others who love someone going through this to observe that kind of meeting, because maybe we'll learn something without the emotional baggage that comes with that family dynamic. And this is not easy. This is, as I said, is very uncomfortable. It can be very counterintuitive, but it takes, when we practice it, we get better at it. And I like this little exercise of like folding your arms, like just naturally just fold your arms, cross them across your chest. Now do it the other way. It's really hard to do. You have to really think about it and it feels weird and it's a little uncomfortable. That's kind of what this is like. So if we feel that me saying no to my loved one or having a strong boundary about something that I won't accept is going to make them go out and get drunk or get high, use again, relapse, then we're so afraid to hold that line or say no. But once we do it a few times, we realize we're not going to be the ones who cause a return to use. I experienced this with my own son. I can give this example. When he was very early in his recovery, he wanted to go skiing. He had been sober about 6 or 8 months. He wanted to go skiing. It was too expensive because we had basically said, here's what we'll fund. We funded we kept him on our phone. We funded his health insurance. but he was paying rent. He was living very modestly. So he was able to pay his own rent and manage his cable bill or electric bill, whatever it was. I mean, it was very, very modest means. He was living with two guys in recovery as well. And now he needed money. He wanted money to go skiing. And I said, no, I'm sorry, but I can't give you money right now. And he was a little angry with me. And he told me he said it was just so easier when I could go get high. And he knew exactly which button to push. But I held my boundary and I said, I can't give you money right now. And he actually called me back after that phone call and apologized. He knew he was manipulating me. Thankfully, he was in recovery and working a program. So he made that amends with me right away. But it helped me to realize I'm not powerless. I am powerless over what he's going to do. But I can say, I am not going to give you money right now. And it was okay. And he actually shared with me much later that he has expressed that to other people in recovery, that same story, how he was being manipulative with me and learned from it as well. So that was a win-win. And it is uncomfortable. And I love what, there's a really terrific therapist that works at Caring Treatment Center. His name is Mike O'Tay. And he says, we need to get comfortable with seeing our loved ones feel uncomfortable. It's a hard thing to do. We don't like to see our loved ones in pain. But when we first start saying no or setting different boundaries, it just feels abnormal, it feels uncomfortable. But we can't predict the outcome of our loved one. So we know this is hard, but again, we can practice this. And getting to those support group meetings helps a lot. You get so much reinforcement from other family members. I just love this quote so much. If we think about how hard it is for our loved one to hear no from us and that, oh my God, this is going to be difficult for them and they're going to have to do this for themselves. Think about this quote. We change our behavior when the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of changing. Consequences give us the pain that motivates us to change. Love that. So we had some advanced questions, which thank you very much for anyone who submitted those advanced questions. And some of them, a couple of them were about what boundaries look like at various times, what support looks like at various times. And boundaries are important no matter where our loved one is, but things might look a little different on different stages of where they are. So if we're just becoming aware of our loved one's substance use, whether it's alcohol use, addiction, drug addiction, whatever, then they're going to need some of our support in a different way. They need us to help, because unless they're saying, hey, I have a problem, I need to go to this rehab, that is very unlikely to happen. It's not impossible, but it's rare. So we may need to be the ones to kind of intervene in this process and say, I'm going to look for treatment for this person. We might even need to do that before we confront them about their addiction. So that support is very involved on our part, where we're seeking out treatment, we're deciding what we're going to fund, what we can afford to fund, and that sort of thing, and how long we're willing to keep that kind of support going. Once they're engaged in treatment, wow, this is when we get a chance to take a breath. They're either in rehab, living in sober living, going to an intensive outpatient program, or seeing a therapist, whatever that looks like. If they are engaged in treatment, now we can maybe for the first time in a long time get a good night's sleep and maybe get some support for ourselves, maybe see a therapist because perhaps we've experienced some trauma, our family members, where we go through a lot of trauma ourselves. So we need to now really put the focus on us and take care of us. So that support is going to be heavy on us. And sometimes our loved ones are actually in a blackout period when they're in early recovery or early treatment or in a new sober living facility. Those blackouts, I know sometimes parents have a tough time with that because they want to hear from their child or their loved one. And you know, I love the blackout period because they need to focus on their treatment, on their recovery, just like we need to get ourselves together in a program of recovery for us. And if our loved one either has been offered treatment or not, has engaged or not, but now they're either resistant, or if you look at that last section, time has passed, treatment's been offered, but they're just not in recovery. They're not choosing recovery, or they've clearly returned to use. So that is going to look a little different, but it does not mean that we need to completely let go of our child or our loved one, that we cannot have any kind of relationship with them. We may choose to not have them live in our home. We may say that's just not an option now. We can't have you living under our roof under these conditions, but we can still have a relationship. But that's where the boundary work especially helps a lot, to know I'll see you, I'll talk to you about anything but this addiction, because we've had those conversations, we've exhausted those conversations. Now I just want to build a relationship the best we can and be mindful of my boundaries going forward. That's going to look different for everybody in every situation. And it looks different also in the way I think a lot of us think about it. I'm holding a pen here. If you can't see me very well, I'm holding a pen. And what we think of sometimes when we think of letting go is, now my hand is upside down and I'm going to drop the pen. That sometimes is what it feels like when we say we're going to let go of this person that we love. Instead, I would like to think of it this way. So I'm holding the pen, but my palm is face up. Now when I let go of the pen's still in my hand, so I can support the loved one without having a grip on them and trying to control them, but I'm supporting them and not letting them fall, hopefully, but being there for them in an appropriate way. And I think a lot of times we see when we become aware that our loved one has a substance use disorder or an addiction, we might go to some opposite extreme ends of the spectrum here. So what that might look like is indifference, or just being, frustrated, angry, sick of it. I'm done with this. I can't believe what you did. I'm hurt. That is the far left end of this spectrum. On the far right end, we see obsession with, I am enmeshed. I am going to manage your recovery. I'm going to tell you, you're going to now take some yoga classes and you're going to do this. And I'm going to drive you to the meeting and I'm going to wait in the car and maybe I'll come in with you. That is on the far opposite end. We would love to find the sweet spot here of serenity. Where can we find the balance that is somewhere between obsession and indifference? And this means ongoing support for us. I have been going to support group meetings for 12 years. My son is in recovery 12 years. Why do I still go? Because it helps me when he's having a rough time. Believe me, he's been sober a while, but he has had some serious ups and downs in his life. He's lost close friends to overdose. He has had plenty of challenges in his life. I need to stay on my game and stay in that sweet spot of serenity, so that when I hear something that makes the hair on the back of my neck come up a little bit from him, I can work my program. And by the way, this has helped me tremendously with my relationship with my daughter, who does not have substance use disorder, but she has had tremendous mental health challenges. She's had a lot of depression and anxiety. And all of this work that we do for ourselves to learn about codependency, to learn about boundary setting, this helps in every relationship in our lives, with other family members, with coworkers, and all of that. It's a beautiful thing. Yeah, this is what I looked like back in the day when I was very worried about my son, and I lectured and I went right to crisis mode and gave him a piece of my mind. And I wish I knew then this acronym that we love, we use this a lot, WAIT, which stands for why am I talking? We are, I think, especially in my case, there's a lot of fear. I go right to I gotta put the kibosh on this. Like, if you tell me that you are thinking about going to some rave that I think is a terrible idea, I'm gonna start telling you why it's bad. Why am I talking? Why don't I just maybe sit and listen to what they have to say, process it, maybe say, like, you know what, I'd like to think about what you just said and maybe get back to you tomorrow. Maybe I'll talk to another family member about it first and get back to you tomorrow. This also works for why am I texting? Sometimes we get a text that's very urgent. I need an answer now. We can say, wait, I'm not ready to answer this question right now. And give it some thought. We're very reactive, I think, sometimes, especially we parents. Here are those I statements. So when we talk about ourselves and communicate our feelings, then we're being very clear. This isn't about them. This is about us. I learned this actually with my father when he was in treatment for his alcoholism, and his therapist called me and said, "You're going to need to tell him what is okay with you in your relationship going forward. Don't make it about him, make it about you. If you make it about him, he can argue with you. He can't argue if you say, I can't sleep at night when this happens. I get really anxious when you say these things." So our loved one can't argue with us when we're telling us what we need to feel safe, emotionally safe. And again, this PowerPoint, this slide deck will be on that follow-up page that I mentioned. We will have a follow-up page if I didn't mention it, but Judy probably put that in the link as well. I love this expression so much. My friend Pam taught me this, and it's kind of been a mantra for me ever since my son, I became aware that he had an addiction. If it's not my ball, I am not picking it up. At least I'm going to try not to pick it up. What does that mean? Well, what is my responsibility and what is my loved one's responsibility? So this big green button in the center, these are the things that are my responsibility. My words, behaviors, actions, all the things we've been talking about. Also, the consequences of my actions are my responsibility, not his or hers, not the other person's. What is outside of that are not my responsibility. Their words, ideas, actions, beliefs, and especially what's down here at the bottom, the consequences of their actions, ideas, words, beliefs, and so on. Those are not our responsibility. It is very hard to do this, guys, but it is possible to do it, and only pick it up if it's our ball. If it's not our ball, don't pick it up. I love this quote this is why I love going to parent group meetings, because we hear gems every single time. And this was one that I heard years ago, really stuck with me. He said, boy, his dad said, I was playing my movie on my son's screen. You know, we parents, especially, we're doing the best that we can. If all we have to work with is our own life experience, then it's only natural that we would project our personal experience on our children. If practicing yoga is something that helps me, it's only natural that I think it would be helpful to you. So, you know, or if we wish we had done something differently in our younger years, we might try to influence those choices on our kids or on our loved ones. So let's remember that they're an individual, they're different from us, their needs, what's going to work for them is not necessarily what worked for us. So we need to kind of keep open about that. Even when there's a crisis on a plane, we are told that we have to take care of ourselves first before we're capable of effectively caring for a child. Someone asked the question about having feelings of guilt when we take care of ourselves and they're hurting. We can't possibly be effective if we're, you know, sick ourselves, if we're as sick as, if not sicker than they are. So if we're going to appropriately support them, we do need to take care of ourselves. It's also good modeling, just to show them that, you know, we can do this together, or I'm going to have my program, and I hope that you find your program. So I know that some of you are not parents of someone with a substance use disorder, but I do want to make this special note too, especially to parents. Some places that we might get stuck. So I'm going to read these off. After 30 days, my child looks and sounds great, seems to be back to themselves. They're fixed. So that's what our friend Rick Schubert calls being addicted to hope. We see those glimmers, we see that they're sober, that they're working a program, and we think that we're all good to go and life is going to be beautiful now. It may be great, but this is a chronic relapsing disease, like many others, like diabetes and hypertension and asthma and high blood pressure. There is, you know, return to use or relapse is possible. Also, it's not always going to be a bed of roses. You know, there's this sort of pink cloud that people get in early recovery, they themselves, and might think that they're all good to go and have challenges. But we need to understand that this is a journey, which is okay. It's like there are going to be some changes that can benefit us in so many ways. Another thing, I'm so angry, what they did, how do I forgive them? What do I do with this anger? You know, we kind of hang on to that. Anger begets anger, forgiving and not forgetting, and holding it is not healthy for us. It's that expression. It's like drinking poison and hoping the other person gets sick. It's just not good for us. And then trust is such a big one. This comes up a lot. When can I learn to trust again? We kind of get stuck on those old memories of what happened and what went down before, and it is very hard. And I love this expression: time plus experience equals trust. Time for you experiencing them doing that next right thing, that's where we learn trust. It takes time for them, and they need time for them to experience you being consistent with your boundaries and staying in your lane. And that's when they can learn to trust us as well. Wow, it's so important to get help if we need it from therapists. There are all kinds of opportunities for self-assessment, helping to understand the dynamics, like those other family members that I mentioned earlier, whether it's other children or other family members. Helpful with building those communication skills, again, regaining the trust, sharing feelings in a balanced environment, setting boundaries, as we've been talking about, and just learning how to take care of ourselves. These are things that we may have abandoned because we've been so consumed with our loved ones' disease that we just aren't really looking at ourselves and how lost we've become. And I notice a lot of the time in support group meetings too, when you ask someone in the group, how are you doing? They can't even answer about them. They immediately go right to the loved one. Well, I think she had a pretty good week. No, how are you doing? And that is a really tough thing for us to, when we've been nurturing and loving and advocating for such a long time, it's hard to actually think about what we need for ourselves. So these are some promises, and I'm going to make sure that this is on that follow-up page so that you can take a look at this. I'm not going to read through them, but they're just some sort of guidelines for us to follow as far as, what's going to be helpful to me in the future, and promises to ourselves so that we can continue to feel supported. And please know that because we're working with Chester County on this, I want to make sure you know that this link, oh, sorry, Judy, I didn't give you this one to share, but this link on Chester County's website is available to get an assessment, to see if there's a need for help. I can't copy that, silly me. I'll make sure that that's on that follow-up page so that you can get to that page on their website to find access to treatment. And again, one more plug for parent partnership meetings if you're a parent. I'm going to stop sharing. So I see that maybe we have some questions, and we had some advanced questions that came in. So I want to get to those as well. Let me find you guys again. All right, here we are. Okay.
Do you want me to read them to you?
Sure. That would be great.
The ones that I think are appropriate?
Yes, please.
One person asked what was the importance of parents going through a 12-step program as well.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So I mentioned NARON and Al-Anon. Those are 12-step programs that are for loved ones, for us, for family members. 12-step programs are amazing. I belong to a 12-step group, and it is, I can't say enough about it. The Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous was written in 1935, and somehow it is still relevant today. Some of the language is outdated, but man, it's got some real wisdom in there. So I love 12-step programs. That is very separate from our loved ones 12-step program. So this comes up a lot. I hear this in parent groups too, or some other kinds of support groups where the loved ones will say, I'm waiting for those amends, or be like, I'm not sure what step they're on. And we need to remember that our loved ones 12-step program, if they're in one, is their program. And them making amends is part of their recovery. That is really not for us, it's for them. Sometimes amends can feel great, but other times amends can be kind of hard to hear because it might be something we didn't even know about. I think it's helpful on a lot of levels, even if you're not active in a 12-step program yourself, to understand it a little bit. It really is quite interesting. As I said, the Big Book has a lot of great stuff in it. I hope that answered the question.
So here's a question from someone in the audience. and I'm not sure if we're really equipped to answer this, but I know you'll give it a good try. Can an older adult with an addiction have a lack of memory of past events, or could it be intentional manipulation, not remembering?
Oh, that's such an interesting question. I love what Karen Levin, who's one of our therapists, says, and she's a person quite openly in recovery herself. And she says about the person with the addiction, she says, we can't remember what you can't forget. And, it's hard to say. I have no idea what this person's actual situation is, but, manipulating comes along with this disease, unfortunately. So it wouldn't be surprising, but let me just read this again. You're not a memory of past events, or could it be intentional manipulation? It's really hard to say. Not knowing the situation, first of all, whoever this is, I hope you'll get some support with understanding this for you, but maybe to really focus on the present, what's happening today. Is today a good day with this person? Is a relationship going well today? That maybe would be the better focus rather than what happened in the past. Just my thoughts on that, sorry.
A good one. You want to just take the next one too?
Okay.
Yeah, I can read it. My 26-year-old daughter is in rehab right now. She lives with her fiance and my 4-year-old granddaughter. What is the best way to offer her support for her recovery when she comes home without constantly talking about it?
Right. It's her program. It is her work to do. And hopefully when it's appropriate, she will speak to you about what she needs to speak about. This is where those boundaries really come in, right? And I gotta say, I fell into this thing where my son actually wanted to talk to me in his early days of recovery about what he was learning in AA and things like that. And my ego was kind of loving that a little too much. And I finally actually had to say, I don't think this is a conversation to have with me. So I don't even, and that wasn't even me inviting it to happen. That was me saying like, I don't think this is our conversation to have. It is really and truly their recovery. There's a lot of wreckage that comes with this disease, and there's a lot that they have to go through, and a big emotion or feeling that a lot of people in early recovery express is shame. So to have to revisit that with a loved one can be really, really hard. I love the question. The best way to support her recovery, is to maybe just keep it light, and like, what would you like to do this weekend? What can we do that would be fun? That with the 4-year-old or whatever, and just, we can have a relationship outside of this disease. We should have a relationship outside of this disease. We hopefully did in the beginning. And they're probably feeling so much. I mean, often they feel so much of that like damage that's been caused. So it really is helpful to kind of just rebuild, right? Just to look at what you had in the past or what you want to have in the future. And let the professionals work on that treatment stuff, because it is not easy. With all of the amazing treatment programs that are out there, this is still a chronic disease that takes a lifetime to manage. So it is hard work. Let them do that work on their own independently as much as possible.
Great, this is a good one. Am I obligated to keep the addiction private when the addict has requested this? I would like to confide to friends for support.
Yeah, this does come up a lot too. And, we can talk about the fact that we've been impacted by addiction without talking about the person, even mentioning who it is or what the relationship is. But gosh, this happens to us too. And I've heard people say like, well, it's really not my story. You've got a story. You've been through something. You've been through a really, everybody's story is different, but I don't know, I'll speak for myself. I had a lot of trauma. I used to walk down in our game room and not be sure if I was going to find Daniel, conscious or alive or breathing. And just things triggered me, and I was sleepless. I was not focused on work or friends or family. And, of course we need to talk to someone. It might help you to, if you're feeling any guilt about that, just say to your loved one, I need one person that I can trust, and if they know that person, to name them and say, I need to discuss this with friend Judy, and I just want you to know I've got to talk to somebody about this. And certainly talking to a therapist can help as well. And that is absolutely confidential, and you don't have to worry about that. And also support group meetings. You go to a support group meeting, we all say what's said here is confidential. So nobody in that meeting should be going out and saying like, oh, I saw your mom at my meeting and she was telling me that you're addicted. That's not going to happen. So there are plenty of options to talk, but I definitely, when we were planning my son's intervention, we couldn't talk about what was going on because the intervention needed to be very quiet until we did it so that he couldn't know about it. I had a friend who I told she knew everything and she knew what I was going through. And I don't know what I would have done without her. I was not yet connected to the support groups, unfortunately. But yes, find someone and, take my number, take somebody's number, but get some help for yourself too.
This is one of our favorite topics. Does multiple daily use of marijuana with THC cause memory loss, anxiety, and paranoia?
It can. It absolutely can. Everybody responds to it a little differently. It depends on the potency. It depends on the frequency of use. It sounds like it's pretty frequent. Yes, absolutely. We actually just had a program that was recorded. We have a lot on our website. So conversation.zone/cannabis is where you will find a lot of information about cannabis use. I could talk all night long about this one. So good, Judy.
Yeah. Let's see. So what are some suggestions to help an adult sibling of a sib with an SUD to cope with past traumatic events?
Mm-hmm. Right. So I referenced some of this in the presentation. One thing is we can't control them. We can't force them to do that. If they want to some help understanding this, it might be seeing a therapist. It might be, as I said, going to a support group for themselves, like Al-Anon or Nar-Anon, or attending an open AA meeting of some kind. But if they don't want that, if they just want distance, if they're not, and we hear a lot of times their siblings aren't speaking to one another, kind of have to respect that. It's just not our choice. We can hope that over time things will heal. And I always like to, again, think about doing something light with that other child that is not related to the child with the addiction, right? Just spending time with them, being curious about their life. What would you like to do this weekend? What would, let's go to the movies together, whatever, what would you like to do? And being, like I said, curious about their life and not going into this whole, this is what happens a lot of times is the triangulating, like defending one to the other and then defending that person back and forth. And it's exhausting, absolutely exhausting.
Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Oh, somebody asked real quick, in the chat, will Thursday's event be recorded and made available after? We're going to record it, but don't tell anybody because we want you to show up live if you can, but we are recording Thursday's program. So thanks for that question.
They also said, I think, that they tried to register, I think, for this 10 things you need to know about addiction, and they said it was full.
Oh, no, they're talking to Chad, I think.
Judy, I did respond to that message. And
his presentation. Okay.
I just upped the number of registrants, so anybody can register for it now.
Thank you. Okay. No, ours is not full. Okay. Let's see. There was a lot of them. I think a few of them you covered in your talk. Here's one though. My son is an adult, 19 years old, and lives with us. How do I cope with his drug and alcohol use, and what consequences can I give him?
So 19 years old, they're just barely an adult. And this is a tricky time because it doesn't feel like they're ready for adulting, especially if they're using pretty heavily and kind of crossed into that addiction. it is hard to have consequences, and we're talking about rules now, not boundaries, but rules when we talk about consequences for them. So, consequences aren't necessarily punishment. Consequences might be, if you're going to continue to use, you need to see a therapist. You need to talk to somebody about this. Therapy is not punishment. That is a loving thing to do, to say, I'm going to support this treatment for you, that, this option, because this is outside of my scope of understanding. I'm not sleeping, using those I statements, right? I'm not sleeping. I'm really anxious. I don't have the answers. I don't understand why you keep drinking and drugging. I need you to see a therapist. If you continue to live here, you will do something to get some answers for yourself. So if they can't do that, you need to be prepared for what you're going to say will happen if they don't engage in that. If the choice is that you can't live under my roof, because let's face it, if they're using illicit drugs, they're 19, they shouldn't be drinking. That's illegal as well. You could get in trouble theoretically for serving a minor or having alcohol consumed in your home by a minor. So you can say, like, you're going to have to find someplace else to live, but you have to decide, definitively, is this what you're going to do? Be on the same page with other family members in the home and be prepared to say, here are some options for some place for you to live. Salvation Army, whatever it might be. There are places for you to live. This home is not one of them. And try to get in the habit of not calling it home and calling it our house. They're 19. It's not their house, it's your house. When we say home, that gives that connotation of like, can't stay home. That sounds harsh. No, you can't be in this house, in our house. So, and please, again, go to a support group meeting. You will get so much help from the families in those meetings because they've been there. They'll hear more about your specific situation and be able to offer what they've done, and has helped them.
I think there was a few that you covered about boundaries. Here's a specific one. How do we keep from enabling when they need help paying bills?
Yep. Again, I think it's that, whose ball is it? Is it something that will support their recovery, or is it something they should be able to do for themselves? I mentioned, like, I'll just give our situation as an example again. My son was living very modestly. He was able to pay his bills. He actually felt great about it. It's the first time in his life. He was only 21 when he got sober, and he was paying a cable bill. He felt amazing. If I was doing that for him, that's the message, right? Like, you can't do this yourself. You need mom and dad. Who wants to hear that? That's not empowering for a young adult. Instead, to use that language, I always joke that we're going to get this. If I was getting a tattoo, I'd be ready to say, if I'm on the phone, I have complete confidence in your ability to pay that cable bill. Or, if it's treatment related, if it's something that if they're under 26 and they're still on your insurance, great, why not? So it's just that, again, that what are they capable of and what are they not capable of, or what is appropriate, so we need to give the message, I believe you can do this. You can do this. You've been through harder things than this. You can do this. And I saw also that somebody said, how to manage someone who's had multiple relapses. And how much support can a parent or someone give when there's been a lot of relapse. And I think back to I was describing earlier, when you have a loved one who is just not there in recovery, you can have a relationship, you can find ways to have a relationship that don't support their addiction, that don't protect their addiction, but that at least keep you connected to them. And you don't have to have a front row seat for it. There are places they can live that aren't your home. And guess what? The place that they live that has better boundaries than us, it's going to be somewhere else. Like I mentioned the Salvation Army. I'm totally serious about this. They have some amazing programs. They're going to have to want sobriety to go to these places because you can't continue to use in them. Same with sober living or recovery houses. We have a program coming up on that, by the way, as well, I think June 2nd, called Recovery Lives Here. because these are really hard things to do, but we parents especially have a really tough time setting those boundaries. Do I want to drug test my kid? Do I want to be, I call it the 3 Ps, pupils, pockets, and pee. I don't want anything to do with that with my child. That's not how I want to have a relation. I don't want to, when I hug them, be smelling them. Were they vaping cannabis? Whatever, that's not the relationship I want to have. Let the house manager someplace have that relationship. The outcomes are actually better when they're connected to their community. And again, we're going to talk more about that in that Recovery Lives Here program on, I think, June 2nd. I hope that's helpful.
I think you covered everything.
Okay. Anything else you have to say, Judy or Chad?
This was really wonderful, Kim. I really appreciate you sharing your personal stories from your family. I really learned a lot. I liked the way you talked about reframing rules as boundaries, just some of the different language, like using our house instead of home. I really learned a lot. So thank you so much again for sharing all this.
It's our pleasure. Thanks everyone for being here. Please don't forget to take that survey. Judy just put the link in again. Yay. And the recording will be available probably tomorrow morning, and it takes a little while to process. So that will be up in the slide deck and some other resources. I'll get those family promises loaded up there too as well. Thank you again for being with us. Thank you, Chad, for having us. Really, really appreciate being with you.
Thanks everyone for attending. Have a great night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.